I've been to plenty of ballparks and I've sat
Mhm.
in dozens of ballparks, and a net does not change your experience. I just cannot wrap my brain around that.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming back to another recording of Foul Ball Safety Now Talks. I'm Jordan Scott. I'm also here with Brianna Ludwig. Excited to bring on our guest shortly, where they'll take the lead us with questions on the discussion about the foul ball matter. So we're excited to go to our guests very shortly. But before I do that, just want to give a little recap on how Foul Ball Safety Now started back in 2019. Just watching morning news one day, saw a little girl get unfortunately hit by a baseball. And at the time, I thought I was aware of this issue and I had experience attending games and even outside a ballpark in Brooklyn, New York, where we were standing outside as a group more than 20 years ago, young and old, and a ball just came outside onto Surf Avenue and unfortunately struck a boy we were with right in the forearm and left a big mark. And I was wondering why this would be. And soon to discover years later that there's probably 169 ballparks, including that one in Brooklyn, that still may have a situation where balls are leaving the field, maybe 10 or 15 within a 3-hour period during batting practice and games, whether they're hitting the pavement or the window. And unfortunately, in Modesto, hitting a lady in the head, finding out about this through an attorney who contacted me earlier in 2025. So we've been following the news for 6.5 years, working with Brendan, a journalist. Since that time, when I had seen that morning news in 2019, I've been really going at it. We formed Foul Ball Safety Now. We've been interviewing victims, people that have been affected by foul balls, still have long-term effects, or just don't know how to feel about the game anymore from their experiences, and even talking with many baseball players. We probably have interviewed formally more than 30 baseball players, guys that we were able to reach through emails, probably hundreds of emails sent to baseball academies and private instructors, guys who had professional experience, and were curious about talking about this issue with us and told us a lot of stories. Some had graphic experiences to share, some had hindsight experiences to share. So, all very interesting and soon to be a part of a book or a book series as we keep on compiling things. So, that being said, want everyone to go to Foul Ball Safety Now, take a look at all the recent links that we have up, the Seattle situation with the broken bat that flew over the nets like a boomerang, and the whole country saw it together, and nobody said anything, even an announcer saying, "Yikes, look out," when that replay was being shown. So why would broken bats be allowed to fly over nets like boomerangs in the fall of 2025? It's a head scratcher, and we want others to pay attention to this as well. Nobody did on social media, even after the announcer said, "Yikes, look out," as this replay of this bat was coming over the net. So a few other examples to talk about as well, maybe just one other, and then we'll bring on our guest. The Shohei Ohtani vulnerability, that took place in the World Series. People can see the website, Foul Ball Safety Now. They'll click on the Shohei Ohtani vulnerability, and for a moment, you see Shohei Ohtani. This is game one or game two of the World Series. He hits a line drive down the line, and you see his reaction, this cringeworthy reaction of like, "Oh my goodness, I may have just hit somebody." So we feel that is a conversation starter as well. You even hear the announcer say something like, "Shohei sends his apologies down the lines to anyone he may have offended or scared." It was almost like a knee-jerk, sarcastic comment to make noise as the world is watching the World Series, but you hear the announcer say that. So, that image itself is a powerful potential conversation starter because you would ask, why are baseball players in 2025 still having cringeworthy moments? Why aren't we just alleviating that from the player's experience? And clearly, we know of people that have, even with so-called upgrades in professional baseball, we're aware of two people that were blinded within a few weeks at the major league level, blinded in one eye, two separate people. I'm aware of two children that were critically injured in 2023 on the minor league level. Would netting extensions higher or further down made a difference? That's something we'll all want to question together, I believe. But it's about first starting the conversation. And speaking of conversation and discussion, we are excited to bring on our guest. Brianna, how are you today?
Doing great, Jordan. I'm excited to get into this discussion with you and our guest. Our guest today is Joe Garces. He is a retired firefighter from Southern California and a lifelong baseball player. Welcome, Joe.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited about this.
Terrific. Are you ready to take the reins, lead the discussion on where
Yeah,
you think it needs to go? Thank you.
yeah. Right on. Well, a lot of what you said is kind of the same things that have happened to me with my unique blend of being a public safety official and having been a lifelong ball player. There's this perspective that I see it from, not just as a player who potentially hurt somebody. And then there have been a lot of professional players who have mentioned that they won't even have their families sit in unprotected locations at ball fields. And a lot of players feel that we do need to have nets that extend high and far. So that's not a debatable thing. Because I've been that player who's hit somebody, and
Mhm.
as a player, I've seen a lot of people get hit, either my teammates or people who are just innocently at the ballpark or at the field. And then as a first responder, fireman having to respond to these, I've seen both sides of it. And for the life of me, and I know this is preaching to the choir, so to speak,
Sure.
for the life of me, I do not understand why Major League Baseball so vehemently fights this issue. Because, and I know you're very well versed in this, but the idea of we can bring up the safety aspect and doing the right thing over and over and over again, and they just refer back to the same old standards. The quote unquote baseball rule. You knew what you were getting into when you came to the ballpark. It's going to hurt the fan experience. It's going to reduce profits margins because seats won't be worth as much, and on and on. We know all those things, but just when you witness somebody get hit with a ball, particularly a kid, and then when you hear that somebody may have died, which has happened twice in my favorite ballpark, Dodger Stadium,
Right.
over the years, it's just mind-boggling that an entity that's worth billions won't make this happen because they're worried about losing thousands per game. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a big legal issue here, and that's maybe the elephant in the room. It has to do with the baseball rule for sure. And what would you tell the victim, certainly the 14-year-old boy and his family back in 1970, what happened at Dodger Stadium, or my lawyer whose girlfriend was 14 years old back in 1979, who was blinded in one eye at Shea
Mhm.
Stadium, and she offered to bring Jenny to me to see if she would be open to revisiting that experience, which she had done with us. Brendan and I interviewed her for a good interview. What do you tell those folks about no netting above the dugout from 1970 and then again fast forward to 1979, and then it wasn't until 2015, 2016 when all teams in the MLB level finally put netting above the dugout. Did you know then that there was an issue? I think you did. I think we all knew winter after winter after winter what had happened the previous year on the major league level and what they could have expected the next year. So you would have had advanced knowledge about where to go and where to park your car, similar to like Modesto, and where to enter into the ballpark. You would have had all of these things down. It's not just the 30 MLB clubs that go under this assumption of risk. It's clearly the 169 other professional ballparks that also fall under assumption of risk. And even the case that I brought forward in Peoria, Illinois, where I hired an attorney, we actually went a few rounds in court from, I think it was July 23, I think it was, to like July 24, because they didn't even have netting above the dugout until the end of the 2024 season. Obviously, they didn't react to the fact that somebody got hit in 1970 and unfortunately lost their lives a few days later. And similar to what happened with Jenny, the lady who Brendan and I interviewed, what happened turned 79. And clearly, Brendan and I have also interviewed other people who've been blinded in one eye. Rick in St. Louis in 2016, or one of those years where there was potentially no netting past above the dugout or even down the lines, because that video in 2019, which the world saw, Joe, the horrific video, that 2019 video from ESPN, which we call Exhibit A, that even diagrams sitting past the end of the dugout. And you saw what happened to children just sitting past end of dugouts. There's still 30 to 40 professional cities that still have no netting past end of dugouts. And to me, that's unacceptable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely agree with you. When we went to, for example, a minor league ballpark out here in Lancaster, California, the
Mhm.
Jethawks,
Uh-huh.
beautiful ballpark, but I knew enough that I actually, since it wasn't a super crowded game, I moved us so that we were behind the netting because it stopped right at the edge of the dugout. It was as minimal as you could possibly have to protect
Uh-huh.
directly behind the catcher's box. And then the boys, and my wife even noticed this, my boys spent all afternoon because we know, approximately a dozen or to 2 dozen balls per game may leave the stadium sideways. And so,
That's right, that's
my
right.
boys had a great time along with all the other kids. Flash forward 15 years to just this last summer, I'm at a Toledo Mud Hens game, and my wife actually mentioned that the nets now go further than they used to, and I was like, "Oh, yeah." So we actually had a discussion about this just unprompted, and that brought up, of course, Japan because my wife has been to Japan. She used to teach there, and
Okay.
she's been to Japanese baseball games. And, she said that didn't ruin her experience at all. And it's just kind of one of those things that just seems like such a minuscule thing for people to be nitpicky about when you're talking about safety. And it's just very callous when people refer to the baseball rule or you know what you're getting into. To me, I believe that there's enough evidence and enough push, and that push being by actual major league ball players as well, and
Yeah.
people like me who witnessed this and had to respond to people getting hurt. I mean, because you got to remember, the baseball players, we assume that risk. Every pitcher is going to take a few right by the ear.
Oh, that's a whole nother matter. I
Yeah,
can't talk about what goes on in the field. You guys think
yeah.
about it every second. Mhm.
Oh, yeah, but that's because I see that, like, just even a ball thrown from shortstop to first base is going to miss a first baseman's mitt by inches and kill somebody behind him.
I
People have
know.
no idea how hard professional ball players throw until you've been on the receiving end of it. I think we've reached the point where we may have to push this hard with a
Mhm.
congressional hearing, as if Major
Mhm.
League Baseball won't do this on their own. It's
Mhm.
in the public safety to force Major League Baseball to have to implement these majors. And they've been asked, they've been bribed, they've been threatened
Mhm.
and begged with to do the right thing, and they just won't
Uh-huh.
do it. So I think at
Mhm.
this point, we almost have to make them do it. And I've been to plenty of ballparks, and I've sat
Mhm.
in dozens of ballparks, and a net does not change your experience. I just cannot wrap my brain around that. When that's your excuse, when you just saw somebody potentially die or get extremely hurt.
Yeah, that I don't like that response, especially since they know all of the data, and certainly they haven't shared this data. Assumption of risk isn't an automatic birthright. It's not an automatic, "I'm gonna know this growing up. I'm gonna know this before I attend the game." Now, maybe 10%, maybe even 40% of the fans are ready. They have their metaphorical face mask on. They're like, "Bring it on." Dad is there to, be machismo, and the 11 and 12-year-olds are there to take the line drive at 100, even though the 11 and 12-year-olds are really not ready for that.
Yeah.
But what about the rest of us? Why haven't they not educated us all about assumption of risk? Because it starts at the kitchen table with the family. And those 100 million fans, some of them work in different agencies. Some of them are school teachers, and some of them are just plain parents. Once they've been educated, they'll be like, "Wow, this is above my pay grade. I'm gonna knock on the door of that agency." And those people at the kitchen table that do work for certain agencies like OSHA or some children's advocacy groups, they're gonna be like, Wow, you mean we've been going to the games all these years? My agency should have learned about this years ago, and
Yeah.
I don't think they just haven't gotten the information because baseball hasn't educated us. They've kept it in microprint, very disrespectful. Now
Yes.
it's on e-ticket, you can't even find it, and then once you may be at the game already, when it's already too late, I don't care if the announcement is every pitch, "Be careful, be careful, be careful." Foul ball, even by your cup holder, a sign that says, "Ball may be coming at you." What does that mean, Joe? We're not action figures, we're not superheroes. We are
Oh,
not
absolutely.
getting out of the way of a 100-mile-an-hour
Absolutely.
ball. So why are you finally, making statements? Japan has done a little bit of a better job. There's still
Yes.
flaws there, but at least they have ushers and team attendants on every aisle, and whistles are blowing as the balls are coming over the net, maybe giving you some forewarning. And even somebody may think it's a ridiculous way of presenting the education, but they're even putting animation up on the scoreboard and showing fans being carted off in ambulances like it's not a free ride at the ball game. So they're at least they're trying to message with sense of humor, if that's, if you like that. But either way, they are making some gestures. I have some flaws in
Yeah.
certain things. They still allow little kids to sit in these sections called the excitement seats. They provide a
Yes.
helmet and a glove, but I saw one of these videos or pictures. I saw a little kid without a mask. I'm like, "Where's his mask and neck guard?" Because still, you can catch one right in the face. But all in all, they're doing a little bit better. Let's be upfront about the matter as opposed to concealing it. And by microprint being their legacy and now finding it on e-ticket, it's disrespectful. It's they haven't spent a dime on informing us about what went down over the winter last year and what they expect this year. People can see on the website, Joe, Exhibit A1, which you can almost trace your steps and figure out every seat you had sat in any of these ballparks, and you're going to realize that they were exposed. You're going to realize the percentage of the foul balls, which Brendan and I calculated, which we were going off a statistic where they said 53 foul balls in a 9-inning game. I said, Brendan, let's cut it in half to more like 25. Let's not look like we're inflating anything. And we
Yeah.
multiplied 14,000. There's 5 times as many more professional games in the lower leagues than there are in MLB, 2,400 plus MLB games and 14,000 professional games. That's 350,000 foul balls. So we write that up. We encourage people to see the website. You may feel like you've been violated. Your rights were violated if you had gone to games with your little kids 4 times a year over 10 years. 40 times we were sitting in that hot zone. You get a sense of what the percentages are, but you're going to then want to ask, well, how many of them were coming at 100? Well, you know who knows? I think MLB and management kind of knows for the last decade or two, every exit velocity and launch angle, we should all
Oh.
be begging to find out just how bad it was from our experiences. That's if people want to revisit their own steps because they may have gotten away that day, but maybe they'll figure out somebody got concussed or blinded the day before or the day after.
Mhm. And I think you're right there is Major League Baseball knows exactly where every ball lands and the exit velocity for at least the last dozen years. That's
Something
just
like
part of all
that.
the statistical analysis and
Yeah.
everything that takes place. I mean, we know where if this person's thrown an outside slider, we know it has a 8 out of 10 chance of slicing over first base off this batter. We know that.
They know everything.
Yeah. So the people that hold the technology and the information we need to do something about this, for example, if it were as simple as saying, if you're sitting in sections 101 through 115, you are in the foul ball zone. We hit
Yeah.
32 foul balls down the right field side every single game. And you're right. That needs to happen more often, much like Japanese baseball. And the Japanese baseball thing with the danger zones just proves our point. They charge a premium, give you a helmet and a glove and a mask to sit in the
Well,
danger
not
zone.
not a mask, not a mask, though.
Yeah.
I still have some critique on how they do it, but at least socially, they're more out front about the whole matter,
Yes.
and it's
Yes.
important. But again, once you get to the game, it's already too late for Brianna, who have little kids. They
Right.
should have been told this in advance. Don't give me a game plan when I'm here. Tell
Yeah.
me in advance, this is where I need to park my car, similar to like Modesto. And you don't have to worry. You don't need a personal escort to go with an umbrella to escort you from the car to the gate, and this is where
Yeah.
you need to go. Brianna
Right.
needs to know how to enter. She needs to know how to leave. Brendan and I have interviewed two girls by the name of Alexis. One was 4 years old at her first game, and the other girl was 10. The 4 year old, who's now late teenager years, she's got post neurological issues and she forgets things and she got really
Yeah.
hit with a hard ball. And it's unfortunate that, she's going to have long term or she is going through post neurological issues on her head. Her father shares with me. She was very kind in coming to our virtual press conference experiences as a 15 or 16-year-old a few years back. Also, the other Alexis, just standing in a common area in one of these minor league ballparks, waiting to buy a snack, and the ball just hits her in the concourse. And
Yeah.
luckily, she didn't have long term. She even wrote about it. This makes an effect on everyone. One more story I'll give you, and I want you to keep it going. Another girl we interviewed who is now more than 30 years old, the mother of two, who clearly has post-neurological issues and psychological issues. She told us she was unconscious for 4 or 5 days as a little girl, and she shares with us now, even when she was recovering, the team would reach out and say, "You need to come back," and they gave her free tickets and the family free tickets for a few years. As she grew older, she realizes maybe her parents should not have taken the tickets. She's going through like gift remorse, feeling like maybe my parents should have just told them no. Maybe she was the benefit of free tickets as a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old, but as a 30-year-old woman, she's like, maybe that wasn't the right move we did as a family
Yeah.
because, how about address the issue and won't happen to anyone else? And we're have one more case, Joe, and then I'll let you continue, which we're just scratching our head about because we've been talking to with a recent guest, who was an ER doctor, and we were sharing with her about Brendan and I learned about a case where a little boy, excuse me, was struck by a bat as an infant and is nonverbal, and MLB defended this team, and then they made a settlement. Now this kid gets maybe minimal care while he's growing up, but how about they've addressed it right then and there instead of putting this family through the ringer? Unfortunately, this little boy is nonverbal, and he should have been getting all the extra therapists as this was all playing out post-injury, and instead, I think the settlement is he gets bare minimum care and education, and the lawyers get paid. And why did they go on for 6 or 7 years? Brendan and I are in the process of documenting this story because I think once people learn about what this family had gone through and this child is nonverbal, I think, there's gonna be a public outcry. So we're gonna put that report together for everyone to see just the whole experience of what it was like for, a boy to get hit by a bat and how and the absurdities that MLB and the defense lawyers were saying and how they would kick that can down the road while the baby growing up needed a lot of treatment. So, we find out a lot here, foul ball safety now, but we wanna just effectively start this conversation, and we hope there's a point of entry for those people that are gonna be listening.
We don't want to give the impression that if you sit behind the netting, you're safe. So today in 2026, there's definitely more netting in professional baseball than ever before, but improvements are not solutions. And just because the net is there, it doesn't mean that projectiles aren't going to fly over it. So we have two instances on the website you can see from the past season of bats flying over the netting. We've sadly got a long list up on the website right now under incidents reported 2025 of fans who were injured, many of whom were seated behind nets.
People do report their injuries, Joe, on TikTok. Sometimes they even make music to it, but at least we're able to document these injuries. And sometimes their testimonies are very strong with their music videos about them not having any more plans to come to any more games anytime soon. So at least we're able to document some of those things, Joe.
Yeah, and I think that is like you were mentioning the young woman in the concourse. Who would think that
Yes.
they're gonna get hit by a ball in the concourse while you're waiting for the bathroom or a hot dog or a drink?
Yeah.
It just seems and it's not that it's out of the realm of possibility when you watch balls fly. It just
Yep.
that one happened to find a path to her. And that goes to your point that even when you think you're in a safe location, you still have to be heads up about what's going on. I think that is really, really difficult for people to understand when we're trying to enjoy the ball game, talk to your friends, order more food, and you're not
Mhm.
realizing at the crack of the bat, you should at least be looking towards where the sound came from at a minimum,
And it's
because of
okay
that.
to finally educate us, and finally, the unknown factors will be gone forever. And that's
Yeah.
the ultimate goal, Joe. The unknown factors were always there. And when those people who are affected have that rude awakening, their lives will be changed forever. Erwin Goldblum, who unfortunately his wife was struck at the Dodger game in 2018, he's been very kind with us. He's been part of 6 or 7 of our virtual experiences with the media. He also has given us one-on-one interviews, and his daughter, Jana Brody, she even wrote a book called Sit Behind the Nets. So that's a pretty powerful title of a book, whose
Yeah.
mom, right? So
Yeah.
that was in the Loge level at Dodger Stadium. So that was behind home plate in August of 2018. It wasn't announced till 2019 because Jana was looking for other research on the baseball matter of people who had been injured or seriously injured or killed. So her mother wasn't even mentioned on the list, and this was in 2019. So we do know for the full month of September, clearly, if she was hit in August, we know for the full month of September, 15 home games, 15 away, whatever it may be, there were at least probably 15 dates that nobody knew of what happened to Mrs. Goldblum the day
Mm.
before, or the week before, or a few weeks before. And even into the 2019 season, the Nets weren't raised until September. So it was Labor Day 2019, probably a year and a few days after Mrs. Goldblum was struck. And again, if they could raise the nets in a few days, which they probably did during a road trip, why did they just raise them right away in 2019? Now, people in April, May, June, July, and August were sitting in that seat in a row. Maybe they heard about it through the 2019 announcement, but it's probably not front page news at that point, unfortunately. So people were sitting in that seat. You know, you could have gone to a game the week before in August and then come to the next homestand in September, sat in the same row. Hey, look, the Nets are a lot higher. You'd be like, why did they decide that? Well, maybe because of what happened in August of 2018. Then why was I here 4 times in May, June, July, and August? People would raise those questions. We just want to start a conversation. We want to eliminate the unknowns. Let people decide for themselves how they feel they should get involved. And just to go back on your point, Joe, about the players' union, supposedly there's been negotiations with players' unions and owners about negotiations for more netting. But I hold accountable the players' union almost as highly accountable for their role in this as well, because ultimately they're the guys that are hitting the ball. And maybe they should have said something like, our rank and file is that's not going to hit balls similar to that 2019 horrific video into any of these sections anymore. And we need accountability and we need netting. I'm not sure if there's been a negotiation. I think there was 3 or 4 separate times that this supposedly was negotiated before 2019. So, you know, maybe they just said something, but they didn't fight hard enough. But again, until I know what MLB union said to owners, then I'm not going to pass judgment. But I'm getting a sense that if the union doesn't want their rank and file to hit the ball really hard, well, then speak up. It's a
Yeah.
non-starter. They may just be as accountable to some degree, but we'll see.
And I agree with that. That may be a road that might be an avenue that's gonna have some inroad and have some teeth is to get the players 100% on board because a lot of players have mentioned how badly they feel, and you can see it. You can see the looks on their
I know.
faces, in their body posture, how badly they feel. I've hit somebody. You know, the physics of when you just really crush a ball, you've got a good anchor and everything meets perfectly. It's generally when guys go, "Wow, hit me harder," right?
Yes.
And you just rocket a ball in my experience, 9 out of 10 times, those balls that are hit that hard are almost always foul balls that are pulled with
Hmm.
authority. You know,
Yeah.
every time I hit a ball that hard, you're like, yeah, I'm going to play
Yeah.
Major League Baseball. And then it goes
Right.
foul, right?
Right.
But
Right.
they're going foul into, as we know, regular old ballparks, high school stadiums, junior college stadiums, and then when you
Yeah.
move on to the next level, those minor league ballparks, those major league ballparks, and as we know, they're at 115 to 125 miles an hour. And when you're talking about guys who are at the top of their game and not a person like me, when I can hit really well and always did,
Right. But still,
but
it could
these
hurt.
guys are hitting even harder.
Sure. Of
And
course.
I remember my wife one time as we see a soft foul ball coming at the net, you know, you do that involuntary move anyway, right? It's like, we're not gonna
Yeah.
trust this net. My wife, I remember her saying, she goes, "If there hadn't have been a net," she goes, "I would've just watched that hit me." And I had
Uh,
a similar experience when they required at one point in my career where if you were down the line where they had the bullpens that are, you know, down off the foul pole line just off the edge of play.
when the yeah, it would be on the
Yeah,
side on the foul
yeah, on the side of the
territory
field.
bullpens. Foul
Yeah,
territory bullpens, yep,
yeah. So as a catcher,
yep,
I'm in my gear down there warming the pitcher up,
yep,
but they required that our pitchers wear a batting helmet while they're down there. It was a new rule because balls were going down there. So I'm standing around with my buddy one day after we're done warming up, not really paying attention. Hear the crack of the bat. Hey, Joe, look out. And I turn and look back, and it's one of those slicing balls. And I deked to the right. That wasn't going right. I just couldn't get out of the way. And I just had to turn my back to it, cringe, and take it. But I took it right square between the shoulder blades, knocked the breath
right,
out of me,
sure.
dropped me. But it's just one of those instances where, had I taken one to the head or to the temple, no doubt I could have been crippled or killed
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that hurt so amazingly bad.
of
And
course.
then around the same time, that was near the end of my career, but this is around 2001, right after 9/11, I was at Dodger Stadium. I watched Barry Bonds rip a ball down the right field line, hit a lady right in the head, and being a fireman, I was a rookie fireman at the time, I was a newer one.
Right.
So I ran down there to help out, and the injury to that lady's forehead was devastating. And it's
Oh,
just, I don't understand how anybody can see the photos, see the videos, see the aftermath, and then hear the stories like you hear over and over, and not say, we just absolutely have to put all pressure we can on Major League Baseball to please do the right thing. You know, and like I said, if they won't do it voluntarily or altruistically, then maybe we have to make them because this is an actual issue, I think, that's been around
all the
for
unknowns need to
decades.
be presented and let the chips fall where they may, and it's all about effectively getting change. I'm in it for change, and I'm also in it to make sure that the victims, will have a voice or reconciliation for sure. I'm watching Mets and Angels Sunday Night Baseball in 2022, and I'll be able to pull up the date when the time comes. Brianna, if you can find the date, that'd be great. June, I think it was 2022, Mets Angels Sunday Night Baseball. So ESPN was covering it. So a player hits the ball down the lines at 108 because I knew it was 108 because it showed on the graphic
Mhm.
108. I guess Sunday Night Baseball, they pulled out the bells and whistles in 2022, and, everything was, in magnified. So you see the ball go at down 108. You knew it cleared the net because you hear silence in the booth. There are 3 guys working the game for ESPN, and the only one who said anything, one of the 3 said, "Oh, that went in fast." Instead, the 3 of us would have been like, "Oh my goodness, I hope there wasn't a kindergarten class in there." And they'd be like, "Yeah,
Yes.
Jordan, what the heck is that all about?" But instead, you did not get the elaborate response, the ongoing, commentary from the announcers because I think they're in a position where if they do highlight what we all just saw together, they didn't show the ball going at 108. They did. They showed the exit velocity of 108. They didn't show where it landed, but it landed somewhere. It didn't bounce off
Yeah.
the net on the side, and it was pretty graphic. And I think Brendan and I clipped the video. So, Brianna, Mets and Angels don't play all the time. Maybe
Yeah,
you
I believe
because
it
it's
was June
interleague.
12th.
Sunday. Was that a Sunday? Sunday Night Baseball? Mets Angels in Anaheim?
Do you suppose that some of the hesitancy on Major League Baseball to even do public safety announcements or public safety campaign or, you know, be safe, beware kind of campaign type thing? Do you think that they hesitate that for the legalities of, well, if we do
Yes.
this, we're now admitting we know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep,
Brianna's elaborated on that, and she's
I
doing
can
great.
elaborate on it, but
She's been with me for over a year, and as a parent, she's getting into the weeds on this matter, and I
Yeah.
appreciate her spending her part-time with me. Yeah, I want people to see for themselves and then question why they believe that this hasn't been addressed entirely, that I'm using the term unknown factors haven't why haven't they been presented, since lawyer's friend was blinded back in 1979. Because
Yeah.
maybe then it would have opened up a can of worms on what happened to the poor young man at Dodger Stadium, Alan Fish, in 1970. Did they know in 1970, from 1970 to 71, that it was time to educate all Dodger fans about, hey, what happened to this young person wasn't like a once in 100-year thing when it comes to near misses. Near misses are regular. We can't have business as usual as balls whizzing by people's ears. And yes, business as usual, having balls whizzing by people's ears will lead to somebody being seriously injured or killed on the next pitch or the next 47 of the same kind. So
Absolutely.
why are we like not finally having this conversation, which we're doing now, but it's the three of us that are breathing life into this conversation today. And that's what we do. We remain optimistic of foul ball safety now. We're not bitter. We're encouraged. New guests are coming on and agreeing to be part of this with us. So we're really excited, Joe.
Yeah, and I think when I had talked to you last week, I said I have my own personal one about this, and it's about I've dug 2 kids up on the beach for digging big holes in the sand. Sand collapses, you can't dig yourself out. And that's my big one that I go after, right? As a passion because it's just a preventable accident. And I know that much like the sand digging, baseball's a long time pastime. We all grew up doing it. We all grew up digging holes in the sand, playing baseball. These are all things we're so used to that are ingrained in our lives that when tragedy happens, you don't want to associate that tragedy with your fun that you've had and your good memories. But I think that that's looking at it the wrong way. I think that, like you said, the passion for baseball is always going to be there. And so when we go to the ballpark, if we know that sitting in this area of the Loge is dangerous, then that's a heads up that we don't have right now. And I think that's going to continue to have to be spearheaded by people like you who taken the next step besides just, complaining about it, thinking about it. Now you've done something about it. And along with, what you were just saying, I think it's about the momentum and the passion that's going to keep this going until we hit the right stride and your website goes from being as big as it is to being explosive and being the go-to when 60 Minutes or legacy media, NBC, CBS, ABC, ESPN, when they really want to start doing something about this, I want them to be able to turn to somebody like you who is grassroots, who knows all of this and knows what to say and has talked to the victims and talked to the teams and the players and Major League Baseball. And I think, what you're doing is admirable, it's necessary, and I'm very honored to be giving my opinion on being a part of it.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. And I'm hoping the media companies like ESPN and NBC Sports or NBC News, who've done investigations both in 2019 from that 5-minute video, and NBC Sports implied how many thousands of people may have reported to first aid in the 2012 to 2019 seasons. People can see the NBC investigation. I thought they did a decent job. But I guess I'm the guy who's staying the course, and I hope they call me for my latest research. And we definitely believe it's worthy of all news organizations' times. And I guess I'll just step up and keep on presenting the news as we do it, as we continue going along. And I'm hoping, of course, others will adopt the cause. Maybe we'll inspire an agency. We had a pediatrician neurosurgeon who came on, and he threw out this lofty organization that I should be contacting. And that was really cool because he had done that after we had already talked with him and after we had a follow-up call with him because we wanted to let him know about the nonverbal child off the air. And we talked to him about that case. And then he thought maybe this particular institution may be helpful. So that's now January 2026. So he may be introducing us to someone over there. Would love to pass on the torch, Joe, because it is worthy of our time. It's part of our history. And even baseball players themselves, I have a post on Indeed, which is a platform, and I don't mind advertising it. It's $35 an hour for any baseball player who wants to get his buddies in a room so they could have a safe space and speak about the issue. And last week I had my first group call with these baseball players. It was a small group, 5 individuals and myself. I went on for about an hour and 15 minutes. I learned, Joe, that some players are feeling anxiety on every swing. And I thought that was very telling. So there may be a lot of other players that have always felt outwardly, but maybe didn't discuss it with their buds, that they were feeling anxiety on every swing. That's interesting. Maybe their
Mhm.
moms and dads
Absolutely.
were informed, but maybe everyone else was not. And maybe that's something that we finally need to address. We want the young players to play free and clear, just like the Queens College matter that I'm following up on. And after 4 letters, getting a receipt from the NCAA, I thought that was positive. We included the NCAA on the 4th letter, and, we got a response back. It was not a blow off, it was more of a receipt, contact the regional office, but at least we have it in writing, and they've read the other letters that we put out to Queens College. Student athletes deserve the right to feel like they can play the game free and clear, and that should be part of our future. And wherever this conversation goes, we're meeting all kinds of people that are adding in their observations and they're bringing their expertises, representing their niches on these questions. So we want to empower you, Joe, as a guest, to bring the questions to us, to lead the discussion, because you believe that the people listening to this will get something out of it. So we want to just empower our guests to do that. And I think this has been a great discussion.
From my point of view, like, in a lot of it, what you, were just saying too is, I've hurt people by hitting foul balls, and that is absolutely true. You feel horrible. You feel like just the worst person on earth, but you didn't choose where they sat, you didn't choose where the pitch location was, you just chose to swing at that pitch. But that affects you as a player. You're out of the game. Your head is out of the game after that happens. And then I moved on to being a coach. And it was the same thing. I would see people, my players, do something that would take their heads out of the game, and that, or injuring somebody on the sidelines is part of that. And what I noticed, and I think is a good thing, is the era that I grew up in was, 70s, 80s, 90s. It was a lot different than it is. And I played up until 2012. The vibe changed from the greatest generation who were my coaches, where you had to be tough. This is what you asked for. There's no crying in baseball. To those of us who kind of bridge that gap to, I think players now, the players that I coached, are a little more intuitive to life and people and things around them. And I really believe that, after our conversation here, that the groundswell is going to be led by the players, and potentially the players union, or in conjunction with the players union. It's going to have to happen
Okay.
for them to really push this as this is something we want. We know this isn't safe. This isn't safe. And I really think that's going to be an avenue that could have a lot of traction, a lot of teeth, that the players say, this matters to us. We want to see this fixed. I think that they should negotiate the safety into their fans.
Great stuff, Joe. Great. Brianna, you wanna bring it on to Joe?
Yeah, I do. Joe, as somebody who played the game for so long, did you ever discuss this issue with fellow players, fellow teammates, or even once you started coaching, did you ever discuss this issue with the players that you coached?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A very specific example was me mentioning to a player whose grandpa insisted on sitting at the edge of the parking lot to the JV field because it was where the basketball courts, those outdoor high school basketball courts, it's where they stopped right next to the foul pole about 100 feet down the line on the right field line. So he could sit slightly elevated sitting up there. But I told Gil, my player, I was like, Gil, your grandpa's in a bad spot, right? And I explained quickly why, and Gil knew. Gil knew that's where that foul ball to that side just goes slicing right over there every time. And it was just one of those things, he just hated being right. He didn't get hit, but there was at probably at the time, late 60s, grandpa scrambling to get out of his camping chair, toppling over, and just barely getting missed by a baseball. So that prompted a discussion there because we, on the JV field, we had hardly more than a backstop and the dugouts. That was it. So anything that wasn't directly behind the backstop, potentially, that's where all the parents sat, they were getting hit. As a player, I did talk with other players about this, particularly after I hurt somebody, because I was a grown adult then. And like I said, I could hit really well and I could hit really hard, and I hurt somebody. And so that prompted some discussions because I'm a little bit more of a touchy feely type of guy. And so it ruined my day. But yeah, that did prompt a discussion about how dangerous this is because I've played all over, the ballparks, all over the I played in most of the minor league stadiums in the Phoenix area. And I played in a couple other ones around the Western US, and there's never proper netting out here, and at the time I was playing, there never was, and so that was always something that I advocated for because I knew just how dangerous it was.
I think there are solutions, guys. I want to stay positive. I believe that we can continue talking to new guests and guests that we're speaking to today, or guest hosts that are bringing questions to us, are also taking a lot of information from these conversations. So we'll continue going week to week, and we may have more than one recording a week. And as long as the interest remains from our guest hosts representing their selves as fans or their profession, and they bring perspective and they bring really interesting discussion, we'll keep it going. So we're excited, and thanks everyone, and hope everyone has a good time today.